Welcome back to part 2 of Conquering Kalimdor. This is a mod for Conan Exiles, if you did not know. This is going to be part 2, and the last part, we went around and checked out a couple of things, and looks like it was a bit beyond my level. So, this time we're going to be heading toward Orgrimmar. After all, if I'm going to be conquering all of Kalimdor, I'm going to need a home base, aren't I? I did make it all the way to Ratchet and even Alcaz Island, but for now we're going to stick to Durotar. I go ahead and I spend some of my points that I acquired by leveling up just from killing random mobs, discovering things, mining, and the such. I'll put them in strength, vitality, and grit, and a little bit in encumbrance so I can carry some stuff. I then go ahead and spend some of my recipe points just to get a little bit of standard recipes, thrall taker so I can get some allies, and the like. As I head north, I eventually see Razor Hill off into the distance. I look over and I do see the Coltiris settlement. However, it looked like it was closed off, so I decided to skip it for now. Now, I can't be facing my orc brethren looking like this. I mean, look at me. I look like a peon. So I decided to make some pants. That's much better, much more presentable, and is that a zeppelin? No way. This server has moving zeppelins. I decided to watch to see where the zeppelin would go. It seems to be going at a fairly decent pace, so I decided to follow it to see if I can find out where it would land. Luckily for me, however, it actually lands right in Razor Hill for some reason. This guy seems to have a bad taste in his mouth as he keeps spitting. I then head inside to where the warrior trainer would be in Razor Hill. There were no trainers, not even any vendors, but there were some warriors standing around. This guy was extra large. And you can even see how he's got some imported models from Warcraft itself. I then head over to the inn to see if there were any vendors. And there were not any vendors, just the standard fighters and a couple of cooks and such. After looking around Razor Hill for so long, I decided to proceed north through the canyon. After all, this journey is about heading to Orgrimmar. And I finally see it off into the distance. Orgrimmar. I give a quick look around to see what else, but there wasn't much else added. It looked fairly standard. Though my heart started to sink as I approached the gates. The gates were closed. Was I not able to enter the city? Is it not finished? There is no way. Would I never be able to see my precious... No way. The gate actually opens as you approach. Could it be? Could the city actually be finished? As I round that corner, I then see it. My precious Orgrimmar in its full glory. I was actually surprised that it took on the vanilla form instead of the more recent expansions. Of course, now I'm going to have to explore the city. I first discover a mailbox right in front of the bank, and to my surprise, it actually had something in it, a brief. So I take it and try to read it. Unfortunately, it is all in German, as per the standard of this mod, as this mod is mostly written by a German author. I head into the bank, and while there were no NPCs, I did find a chest. I opened it, but it was purely poor items. I take a couple of the bones, and I take the stone. I might as well. So then I continue on. I head into the inn to see if Gammon would be there, but Gammon was not there. However, I did find a very, interesting blood elf. I find another mailbox next to the auction house, but it was fairly empty. The troll model inside had a mix of imported game models as well as standard Conan Exiles armor, which actually looked very well made. I look around the auction house and I see there are some NPCs up here. However, they are also just fighters. I was hoping they would at least be vendors. I continue exploring Orgrimmar, running through the drag. I then see the Cleft of Shadow opening, and I decided maybe I should explore there. Unfortunately, the path is blocked. I figured, well, maybe it is a portal that will lead me into an instanced area, so I attempt it anyway. Unfortunately, it is blocked, and you cannot enter. So I turn around and head for the Valley of Honor instead. The Valley of Honor is, well, the Valley of Honor. Now, I did want to check out the arena, however, I decided to leave that for later, and I decided to head to the stable instead. And for some reason, instead of wolves, which wolves are in Conan Exiles, by the way, there are piglets instead. And which was weird is these pig models, to my knowledge, are not in Conan at all. There are boar models, but unlike the Valley of Trials, there were no boars there, not even pigs. So it was kind of strange seeing pigs where the wolves should be, and dogs where the pigs should be. I head up to the hunter trainer area, and to my surprise, there's actually a stable there. No wolves, but there are horses. There are vendors there that sell horses for gold, but I noticed that there were baby horses, and in Conan Exiles, you can pick up the baby horses and then train them to be adult horses. I picked one up, but it was too heavy for me. But I at least now know where they are, so I drop him and I leave for now. I can come back later and pick up a horse when I'm ready. One last stop on the way to where I will make my home, I had to visit him. You know who I'm talking about. I look over to the right, and I did notice that there was no tree with a skull on it, which was a bit sad. However, the real prize was up ahead. I make my way inside, and sure enough, he is sitting there. I was curious to know if it was actually named Thrall, so I did get up closer to see, unless it just said another grunt. Though, I was wrong. It was indeed Thrall. Thrall, my dude, you're looking a little pale there. I continue to the Valley of Wisdom. If I'm going to make myself a starting base, or at least a starting home, I figured that would be the best area to make my home. After all, it is near a water source, and there is aloe there, so I can make potions. But I decided to take another detour real quick and head into the PvP area. Again, I wanted to see if there were any vendors, maybe vendors that would sell some gear or something. Alas, there were no vendors, they were all warriors. So I continue on to the Valley of Wisdom finally. My original idea was that I was going to build a home, just a simple home where I can store trophies and armor stands, and then have a second area for building stations. Since you need a lot of building stations in this game, I didn't feel it was a good aesthetic to have it in my home, just like a normal Conan server would have. The area next to the pond was very flat, a good area to begin building my home. I looked around for a little while to see what the trolls had to offer, but again, they were all fighters, and there was one performer. Actually, no, it was not even a performer, it was a cook. I walked over to the bridge just to look at it real quick, and yes, it did go out into the Barrens. So this was, again, a perfect area to build my base. It was next to a door so I could leave the city easily, next to a water source. There was plenty of wood, rock, and even aloe, and some herbs for fiber as well. So I start grinding up my materials. I build a wooden box so I can store away my stuff. And then I begin building my crafting stations. Now, I didn't know exactly where to put my crafting stations at the time, but then I realized there was a building next to where I wanted to build my house. It was empty, and there were no NPCs inside. Since I was on a solo play server, I did not have to worry about other players stealing my items, so this would be the perfect area to build a workshop. And I start placing my workstations. I grab my chest that I had placed earlier, and I set it down inside. And I get to work. I put in the iron that I farmed earlier, and I put in some branches so we could start smelting. While I waited for the metal to start smelting, I decided to go to my nearby neighbor, a troll, and I PvP'd him in the city. Unlike World of Warcraft, you can actually PvP in the city. He fought hard, but I fought back as well. I tried to take a potion, but he interrupted me. I quickly dodged out of his way as he continued to strike. All I had was a stone sword and some raggedy pants. He had gear and a steel sword. Turned out, just like in World of Warcraft, they have a leash. I ran too far from his starting point, and he ran back like a bitch. I was a bit confused at this, because Conan enemies don't exactly do this. While they do run away and go back to their starting location, it is a much farther leash, and sometimes they will follow you throughout the entire map. So I took that opportunity to heal, and I restarted the battle. He thought he could get the better of me by just fighting me with his fists. After all, look at his gloves. They have claws on them. He must be some sort of druid. Then he got fed up when I started kicking his ass, and he pulled out his axe. We fought hard, but in the end, I got the better of him. It took a while, but eventually I landed the killing blow. And of course, there was a lag spike, and the frame froze right as I dealt the landing blow, so you did not get to see me split him in half. I loot his body. He doesn't really have anything of value, but it was well fought. I then decided to harvest his hide. I hear troll hide is especially great. I finally build myself a Horde workbench. This is where I will be building most of the Horde-related items of this mod. I place it near the door so I had quick access. At first, all I had available to me were some fences, a chest, a couple of banners, some rugs. I couldn't make them at the moment, and I didn't really need to make them at the moment. I just looked at them to see what it had to offer. It was finally time for me to make some armor. So I go ahead and I craft the Bear Shaman set. I felt it was the best looking for an orc of my stature. There we go. Now I'm starting to look more like a warrior.